sometimes it takes us very, very long until new features get deployed. If we get new requests, it takes about 6 to 12 months to put these new features into production. So he started to think that, and he already seen that some of the competitors were able to deliver features faster. He got a little bit concerned, and he started to create a dream. And his dream was, I want to be able to click a button and new features are released or deployed to production system when I want to do it, not when IT is telling me I need to do that. So he wanted to have more flexibility in putting value to the customers, to the end users, much, much faster. Faris already mentioned the sponsors. I also would like to thank all the sponsors and also the organizing group, because I know it's a lot of effort to put everything together, and it's a big deal, and it's great to see so many people here with the interest, and I'm sure you will spread the word, and we will have even more people interested in that topic next year. So, I also had a dream when I studied. I was thinking that in 10 years from now, we will program like this, drag and drop. I really believed in that, and I think when I see some of the smiles, I think some of you believe that as well. That, okay, we can focus on value, on features. We drag and drop the stuff together. We can work, still as a group, but we can really focus on new features. But in reality, sometimes it looks more like this. Right? We are a big group of people. We are working together. We create value together. They are all working at the same place. In how many situations do we have that with, 100 people in a room? We are distributed around the globe, so we have additional challenges. They had a good thing with that collocation. So we are a lot of people working together to create the value, to create the solution, and this adds an additional challenge to management. Leaders, which need to support us. And I would like to quote Edward Stanley here, and he says, "It is not enough that management commit themselves to quality and productivity. They must know what it is they must do." And I have an example, and now I need to see if we can do that with the microphone. Coming back to the newspaper, I will try to use this one. So, reading newspapers is sometimes very annoying for me because of the size, the format. So if I would turn the newspaper, want to turn it around, it's oftentimes falling down. I don't like the size, the format of that. And in the airplanes, I'm flying a lot. People behind me are sitting there reading their newspapers and pushing it into my bag and destroying my hair. So that's why my hair is getting loose here. So I ask myself, why do we have this format of newspapers? I'm very sorry. Big newspapers. Does anyone know why we have this format?
How you can read half of it in the format and read the other half of it?
There are some ideas for optimization. But the very interesting thing is that in the 1600s, newspapers were like standard paper books, about this size. And then in 1712, government introduced a tax on the number of pages of the newspaper. Now we are smart people, right? What do? We make larger pages. Perfect, we save money. So they put in a policy which made a lot of sense at this point of time. Now we are going on with the story. Because in 1855, this tax was discontinued. So no tax anymore on the number of pages. Did we change the format? Not really. We still have this format. It now starts to get some smaller newspapers as well. And then I started to think about transforming that to the business world. I was working with a bank. They had 1,500 policies and standards in place. You can guess each project manager is supposed to know all of them and to support them. It's not possible. And then we started to work with this organization and especially the leaders to think which of these policies and standards are still accurate and valid. And we have been able to remove and remove and remove. Because some of them made a lot of sense at a certain point of time, but they don't make sense anymore. So it's about, that's the job of leadership, question certain situations. And now you can see the impact on the environment, on the culture. If we remove some of the elements, this will change the culture of an organization. So we need to have our leaders involved, setting the right environment and supporting basically productivity, quality, and especially employee engagement afterwards. So, coming away from that, we have Agile as an approach where management maybe doesn't have the most important role, at least when we look at Scrum, where we have product owner, Scrum Master, and team members. Very powerful unit. But these are teams, typically 7 to 9 people working together, and there are systems, solutions which have more people, so we need to have some additional support. So we are working with the Scaled Agile Framework, we are developing that framework, and the framework is basically a public-facing website. You can click on all these icons and you get additional information. So you need to have the individual components which are in a high quality to be able to create good, well-integrated systems. With program execution, one of the challenges here on a program level, we have a team, we have a program, and we have a portfolio level, is how can we as a big group execute a program together? We have transparency. If we don't see the problems, we cannot optimize that. We need to see the issues, otherwise we cannot work on them. We need to see what is our work, what are we doing. And the last one is alignment. And for that I would like to do a quick test. And please have a quick look around the room and outside the window.
Do you want us to see outside the window?
Sorry?
Do you want us to see outside the window?
Yeah, I know it's... Maybe it's more interesting outside to see the beach, but I hope that I can get you back afterwards and that it's interesting enough. So now I need a little bit of trust. Close your eyes and take your hand and point in the direction of east. East, and keep your hand up, please. There's no right or wrong. Good. Keep your hand up and open your eyes. And now look around the room. We see some hands going in this direction, some in this direction, some here, some here. So if we, as a big group, as a big team, would have a job to maybe move that podium here, we have to pull on that, to pull it in the direction of east. Very, very clear specification, right? So now everyone is pulling in another direction. And the result is maybe we move in one of the direction or the podium is at the same place. And it's very clear, and we see that when we develop products, software, systems, it's exactly the same problem. Oftentimes we don't have the same understanding where east is. By the way, I have no idea in which area we have east. I have to check most probably over there, so I have to check my extended brain. to do that. So most probably over there. But the key point here is alignment. If several people or several teams are working together, we need to have an understanding in which direction do we want to walk and pool our energy. That's how we can focus. The framework is built on a set of lean and agile principles. And you see a whole list here. We have the Agile Manifesto, which is one of the cores of Agile, which is a very, very good source of information. But there are also lean principles, and you see some principles there, and I don't want to be boring and cover all of them. I want to pick on some. And the first one I would like to look at is the third one. Assume variability and preserve alternatives. So when you talk about variability, we need to differentiate between production and research and development. In production, we don't like variability. We try to minimize that as much as we can. But when we do research and development, if we develop new products, we need variability because we cannot add value if we don't add some differences. So if I'm just copying the iPhone, one-to-one, same camera, same screen, same battery, same price, different brand, I would most probably not be able to sell that. So I need to have something which is different. So I need to take some risk to create some variability. And another interesting example of development, do you know how we developed flying? I think a lot of us are flying a lot. Flying, we have the brothers Wright, who started with flying. They never had the intention to build an airplane. They wanted to understand flying. So they wanted to get more knowledge. So they had always different alternatives. And they didn't focus on, okay, we need the airplane. This is the product. They wanted to, okay, we want the solution to fly, whatever it is. So they always had several alternatives in place. And maybe sometimes we need that too. It's not only one direction which is good. Maybe we need to preserve certain alternatives. So let's go to another one. Decentralized decision making. That's a scary one for a lot of people. It was me. I was a manager and a waterfall project manager, and it was scary. When I moved to Agile, and coming back to Faris' intro, you need to experience it. If you are not experiencing Agile, it's very hard to get it, to understand it. So I had to experience it, and I had to put my fear away. What is this decentralized decision making? So it's basically, think about a large organization. There is one group who makes strategic decisions. Where do we want to invest our money? They don't do the decisions, okay, what is the feature we are implementing? They make the high-level decisions, where to invest the money out of a strategic purpose, and then they have hired the right people, for example, product managers, who help us to create maximal value with the money they have available, because they understand the context. They have the technical knowledge to do that. So decentralized decision making is not losing control, it's making decisions at the right level, with my context, with my knowledge, and delegate some of the decisions. And it's basically enabling, because that creates a lot of motivation in teams. The last one, I go into the middle, the long one. Facilitate flow by reducing batch sizes, mapping queue length or managing queue lengths, and limiting quick working process. Does anyone like to wait in queues for coffee or for food? You like it?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I like to see how it's organized.
Exactly, you like to see how it organizes, and by the way, I'm doing the same. I'm sometimes just sitting into Starbucks I'm living in New York City. I'm originally from Switzerland, as you can hear my strange accent. Sitting in a Starbucks and observing what is going on with these queues. And it's so fascinating to see if the queue is long. Maybe some people enter the Starbucks, they see the long queue, and they just go to another place. Long queues are bad. So Starbucks was very smart, and I've seen it at different places as well, McDonald's. For example, then they come with their tablets, and they take the order much, much earlier. So you don't have to wait until you go to the order place, because then you have time to decide you are leaving the shop. So they are taking your order earlier, then you cannot leave. So they understand queues in their context. But in general, queues are bad. So we need to manage them. We also need to have smaller batch size, which helps us to reduce the flow. Going back to the product manager I started at the beginning. He wants to have individual features published to production. Continuous flow, because the users appreciate that. So we want to support that. So having all these principles, and all the principles are coming from Agile, from product development flow, and from Lean. And this is basically the basis of the Scaled Agile Framework. The framework started in 2012, and about every year we have a new release. So we learn new stuff. We work with organizations. The community gives us new feedback, and this is integrated. We are now at version 3, and in August there will be a version 4 available with all the new learnings we have, working with organizations, scaling up. So this is the whole framework, and I know it looks quite complex, like a lot of information, but we are working on complex problems. So I want to not cover all of that, because that's training. We go in all of these aspects in the training. But just pick out some of the elements. Let's start with the team level. What's the foundation, the basis? That's Agile. We need to be Agile. Nothing beats an Agile team. And if I have a small product or a project I'm using with 5 to 9 people, I'm never scaling. I'm using that team and using Scrum because that's the most efficient way to do it. But if I have more people, then maybe I need to do something. So nothing beats the Agile team. Agile teams, team level, typically 5 to 9 people, Scrum, 3 roles, product owner, Scrum Master, and a cross-functional team to be able to deliver the solution. We also see more and more adoption of Kanban in case of the Agile framework. And these teams have a lot of fun. They are high potential, high energy teams creating value really, really fast in 2 weeks iterations. So every 2 weeks they deliver some value. So what we have if we work together, if we have several teams working together, we need to scale up. So a team of Agile teams. And we have some new challenges doing that. We need some alignment, that all the teams are walking in the same direction, working in the same direction. We may need some governance around that, typically in 2 areas. It's very depending on the field. But maybe we need some architectural guidance, and we need some user interface guidance. Imagine a software which is working on your desktop, on your iPad, and on your iPhone. And each device has an own team developing a user interface. Now, you have an iPhone, and maybe your kids have an Android phone. And you need to explain them something, or you want to explain them something, and the user interface is completely different. It's the same application behind, but the user interface is different because it was developed by a different team as a customer. Would you like that? Not really. A little bit of guidance makes sense. And we've also seen one of the principles which was take an economic view. Now if you think that architectural concerns, teams are working with databases. One team is using Oracle, one team is using MySQL, one team is using SQL Server from Microsoft. Does that make economic sense? We have licensing fee. We have to have the skills. We have maintenance. Out of an overall organizational point of view, we save cost when we harmonize that. So some guidance on these levels can make sense. But also here we want to deliver value in regular intervals. So we have a kind of an iteration here which is between 8 and 12 weeks. It's called program increment, PI, which we don't plan everything in detail for all this time frame, but we want to get a high-level overview to be able to identify dependencies and to have our objectives. Another level. We have several programs, or we call it the metaphor of art, Agile Release Train. Now we have several of them, so we need to somehow coordinate them. We go into a portfolio level, we are working in a lean, agile portfolio way. And what we do here is basically we centralize decision making, we centralize strategy, where do we invest our money, what are our value streams, and then we have decentralized execution, decentralized control. We have the right product managers on a program level to execute and create maximum value. We try, think back of the core values, we had transparency, we have Kanban systems, what you see up here, to make all the work, all the initiatives we have in our organization, we want to make them transparent. We want to do lively business cases to get an understanding. What is it we do? And then we break it down and do it into, implement it in smaller parts. So doing that leads to some business results. And this is just some examples we got from customers. I don't want to spend too much detail on that. We have time to market increased. Product manager, we started at the beginning. We want to be able to deliver value faster. Defect reduction, increase of productivity. In some areas we want to see productivity. But my personal favorite on top left, employee engagement. Happier people who are more motivated to work, which basically leads to less defects, higher quality, and increased productivity. And I recently had a talk with an executive, and he asked me, okay, why is employee engagement important? And I asked him the question, how long will it take you to recognize that some of your team members are maybe surfing on eBay or Amazon or whatever 3-4 hours a day? What was his answer?
No idea.
No idea. Maybe month, years, maybe never.
Not one day.
You one day. Why would you say one day?
Is it a problem?
That's a good question. It's maybe not a problem. But if you have engaged people, if they like what they do, if they like the environment, they don't spend so much time on there. They like to build the product, the solution. And that's why we care about engagement. And engagement helps to build the right environment, changing the culture. So you can find some case studies, scaledagileFramework.com, case studies where all these companies applying it with the results. Shouldn't be a sales show here. But now we have another challenge. We have the situation that we build value. We create new software. But it's not visible to the end user. Maybe it's not deployed. It's there, it's somewhere in our version control system. We have spent a lot of time in making sure that we can develop faster, deliver good value, but we haven't addressed the whole value stream from the request until it's visible to the end user on the production system. And that's where DevOps comes into play. And thinking about the product manager, he wants to have new features deployed to production when he clicks the button, very, very fast. First of this topic is the old world and the new world of releasing. Old world. Typically, the release date is IT driven. Product management or management has a request, okay, it will take us 3 to 6 months to develop that so we can release to production in 6 months. Yeah, we have to accept that. There's no other way out of a business perspective to do that. And now imagine the situation where we could say, we transfer that decision to business. We make it dependent on business value. When do we want to release? So we develop on cadence every 2 weeks or every 8 to 12 weeks in a PI, but we can release whenever we see enough value, if we have the customer need. So we have one feature, this feature is available, put it out there. We see organizations like Google, Facebook, and so on doing that. They are releasing several times a day. They have a deployment pipeline, new feature, maybe they can toggle it to say, okay, it's visible or not visible, maybe only to a certain target group. They can do whenever they think they have value, they can put it out there. It's not an IT decision. IT provided the infrastructure to do that. So real business decision. And then you can think, does it make sense to release every couple of minutes to production? Or, in our case, we're creating training material. We have trainers out there. If we would release every 2 weeks, we are capable of doing that. People are not accepting that, trainers, because they have to learn the new material, get familiar with that. We can release every 3 months, but it's a business decision. It's not a technical decision. The same with, think about a fare collection system for public transportation, where you have new prices, new user interface. Maybe you can do that once a year. But again, it's a business decision and it's not an IT decision, which is great. So DevOps, the topic, we want to be able to release on a continuous basis. Oftentimes we do it in large batches, 3, 6 months, and then we have problems. The process is highly manual. Potential of errors, risk is quite high. And also we miss the coordination between the operation people and the development people, because basically operations deployment to production starts when we start to develop, very, very early in the process. So maybe you have heard some of this. It works on my machine. We deployed it to production or to a staging system, and I'm not able to log in anymore. How I'm supposed to work if it's not going like that? Or one I had several times, deployment to production. We put the users on with an e-commerce system, product information management system, worked perfect on all the testing and the staging system, production on, and the system crashed. Very, very disappointing. Or then we have the operations people say, okay, it's not a problem of our service, it's your code, which is not building. So a lot of conflict going on and a lot of frustration because people are not talking together. So we have totally different interests when we look at development. What does development want to do? Create change, implement new feature. That's what we pay them for. So they want to modify features, add features as often and as fast as possible. And the interests of the operation group is totally different. They focus on stability, reliability, what's the uptime of our service. And every new feature, every change is negative for them. Because it affects, it's risky, and it affects the stability. So they want to focus on their services. Each group has individual goals, different goals. But the end goal of the whole organization, of the value stream, is delivering value to the end user. So they should have a common goal. And that's why we want to bridge that gap in DevOps, where we say, very similar to business and IT in an agile world, we want to bridge that gap with strong, involving business people as product owners, as product managers. We want to bridge the gap between development and operation. That operations is involved very, very, very early in the process, and we start thinking about operations when we start to develop our features. Back to the story. Product manager. So remember, company built large systems, and 6 to 12 months was the release cycle. And it's a real life example where we did that. So, typical challenges: releases are deployed, we're not working. We'll see more of that in the next couple of minutes. And we set the goal there that in 1 year, we would like to take the release process, deployment process, which was 3 days manual work to put the release to the production system. That's where you can already see it's a lot of effort to 3 days to put out the new features, so you have high transaction costs. So we don't want to do that as often as possible. And it's high risk because we have a lot of new features which can break the system. So we said in 1 year, we want to reduce the time from 3 days to 2 seconds clicking a button. And then what did we do? How did we start with? And we've seen that in several situations, and that's why you see the practices up here. First one was building trust. Because we didn't have trust from the customers and from leadership and from business that we can deploy to production more often, because they were used, the production system is down for some time, it's never working, 3 days is very optimal, best case scenario, but it always takes a week or even more. So what we had to do is build a system which was as equal to the production system as possible. So we built a staging system. And we used similar hardware. We had a load balancer. And the load balancer was from the same brand, but maybe a lower module or model. We had not 20 servers, we had 2 servers just to show the load balancing. But it was as production equivalent as possible. So we were able then to deploy to the staging to show, okay, it's possible. We can build some trust. And you need to have some trust. That's one of the parts of Agile. Second challenge. We often had situations where QA people, QA teams, test teams, on the Agile teams, they said, oh, the server is down, the server is not working, or this new functionality is not working on our test or our development system. And we realized that basically the development team then spent days on trying to identify the issue on the test server, on the development server, to make sure that we are up and running again. So days and days and days of investment, which we haven't spent in implementing new features, which were important for the project. So what we realized is that oftentimes the operation group or production made some small fixes on the production server, maybe run a script, change the configuration, or install a new package. But this information was not coming down also to the test systems and to the development systems. So it was not applied there, and we faced these problems on and on and on again. So the next thing we did is introduce some guidelines that all the changes on production need to be also applied on test and development systems. That we really have the same versions installed. Unfortunately, it was not done at this point of time. We went on. Next problem, we did the releasing process every about 6 months. So it means we were not used to do it. It was difficult, it was manual, and we made a lot of mistakes doing that. And what we started to do is to do that process more regular. Every 2 weeks, we did that painful process. And at the beginning, it was 2-3 days. So we thought about how can we reduce that to make sense of out of the whole story. And repetition was the key. I think also in your personal lives, repetition is so important. I had the pleasure to learn to fly helicopters. And I remember all the emergency procedures. I remember the first time my flight instructor turned off the engine and I had to land without engine. It was really, really nice. Not a nice experience. But we did it again and again. Repetition, and it was easy. Now, when the engine goes off, I think if you would sit in my helicopter, you would not recognize that the engine is off, and I believe in that. Repetition helped to better understand the situation, to have a releasing process in place, do the painful stuff more often, to learn and to improve. Next challenge which we faced a lot, and I know it was annoying sometimes, where I got the message, oh, I had a hard disk crash. I lost all my code. I worked the whole week and everything was lost. Or I have installed some new modules and they are not here anymore. We have to redo another week installation. So put everything under version control. And it's not only the code, it's also configuration, it's data, test data, it's packages you have. Basically everything should be on the version control because then you know you can make sure you always have the latest version in place. And that you don't have the problem that you have to redo stuff. So we want to check in on a regular basis. So next stuff we had was good. So we had some crashes, which means we have to reset up our notebooks, our development servers. Takes 1, 2, 3 days in more complex system. Another time we lost on developing new features. Frustrating. If business people came in or the managers and leads, setting up the infrastructure again just takes a lot of time. So what we did here is we used new technology, virtualization, where we had some standard images, where if we had a configuration problem, we were able to do that on the template, change the template, and just create a button again, and we had an infrastructure for testing or for development ready for whoever needed to have one. Very, very powerful. And we have been able to remove a lot of the effort which was spent in there. Also manual effort, setting up operating system, database. A script was not executed, so not the whole configuration was done. So really, really helped us a lot. And then we came to the last point. Basically, the actual deployment process. Remember, at step 3, we have done the whole process just more often and manually, and we improved it out of the timing perspective massively because we had to do less bug fixing or less problems we had in the process. So what we tried to do then is to automate the whole process. It was basically, I remember the website, we had one big button there, release to production, and then we tried to have everything automated. It took us some time, and it took a lot of commitment and support from the leadership team as well to achieve that. But after 1 year, we haven't been done. It took us 1 year and 1 month to finish the whole thing. And it was not the product manager who came in and clicked the button. It was the CEO of the company who was so impressed to see that. He came on a visit and said, okay, I would like to be the first one who clicks that button, and this deployed a new feature to production. So it was a huge investment, but from then on, we've been able to invest into building new features. Of course, we had to maintain and optimize the deployment process as well, but we had much, much more time to develop new features and bring these features out in smaller batches. Going back to the principles, we want to have small batches, put it out to the customer, see the reaction, get value out of that, and maybe collect some money in that area already. So very interesting journey. So means we started with being agile. Agile like a fish, very flexible, dynamic, fast. We had a lot of fun in these teams. We then scaled up. So we aligned our different teams, our different fishes, that we are working in the same direction. We also made sure that we stayed lean, maybe compared to the big fish on the right side. So we still tried to be lean and agile, and we had the power of a swarm, so it was very, very energetic and powerful.